Hello, hello. Welcome to Human Design Coffee Talk. And
Welcome.
today we have, drum roll please,
Brrr.
we have Andy Hostetler joining us. Andy is a 2/4 emotional projector, and a lot of you listening might know him as my husband. And we're on here today to talk about, drum roll, him not being my husband anymore.
You guys want the tea and we're spilling it. We've been
Just
on a hiatus for quite a while and a lot has changed since we last spoke to you.
yeah, and I thought this would be really important because on our podcast, Human Design Coffee Talk, Teresa and I share a lot about our personal life through the lens of human design. So you've heard me talk about Andy a lot, and I just didn't want to leave anybody hanging. Also, wanted to use this opportunity to talk about like seven-centered versus nine-centered, separation or divorce, or how we're going about it, talk about, the mechanics of it, and just share real life human design experiments, not even experiments, but just our real life human design lived experience. So,
Yeah, and we actually have had Andy on before. A lot of you reached out to us. We got a lot of good feedback about that episode. So, a little update for y'all on Andy's life.
yeah, yeah.
I know a lot of the people that listen too, so it's kind of nice to be able to have this conversation. So
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming back, Andy, and being
yeah,
open. And perhaps this might be kind of a vulnerable conversation. I think you're both in, at least from my perspective as your friends, or as you, both of your friend, you're both in really good places right now. And so
Mhm.
I think it's great to have this conversation as a full circle moment.
Yeah,
agreed.
yeah. So the
Awesome.
way the way it's gonna roll is Teresa's just kind of guide the conversation and just kind of pull from us,
I'm going to poke around,
poke around a little
ask the
bit.
hard hitting questions.
And as we're recording this, I just checked the transits. The sun is in 37-1 and the earth is in 40. And that's Andy's only channel. He only has the channel of community. So it feels appropriate. This was not planned that way.
No.
And 37-1, the keynote is friendship in the family. So that's cute, appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to know how I want both of you to answer this question in your own way, but how did you know it was the right time to separate and what somatic cues were you getting from your bodies that this was no longer the correct relationship?
Hmm. Do you want me to go first?
Go for it.
Okay. Um, it's really interesting reflecting back because I can see I'm all about the body, right? And what our body's telling us. I've been like that even before I knew about human design. Our body's speaking to us. And reflecting back, it was really interesting because like the entire month of July and into like the first week of August, it felt like it was like, I don't know what, Andy, 5, 6 weeks. We were both like so fatigued. It was this incredible, like it was finally beautiful out and we had kayaks and paddle boards, and every weekend the weekend would come around and we couldn't even get off the couch. Like it was like, are we sick? What's going on? We couldn't tell if we were getting sick or not getting sick. So we separated at the end of September. So I thought that was really interesting, kind of looking back as far as like how my body was feeling. But somatic cues, let's see. I don't know. It's so intertwined. It was how I lived for so long.
Yeah. So maybe
Mhm.
And
like what's the difference now with how you're feeling? What do you notice?
Oh
The
yeah,
contrast?
yeah, the
that's a better
contrast.
question.
Yes, that's a
Yeah,
much better
much.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Andy and I have talked about this too.
yeah.
How it's so fascinating how intertwined our nervous systems are, right? And how much there's going on in this unseen in, when you're in aura with somebody or you're in relationship with somebody. Um, the feeling that I feel now is it's like I feel free, but I never felt not free.
hmm
And it's not like I felt like I was imprisoned by any means, but it's this feeling of it's like when Andy would go out of town for a week or a weekend, and I'd be like, like, and I just thought that was not being around, emotional, because I always looking at it through human design, not being around emotional energy or just being all by myself, completely in my aura. But now for me, I feel like I have more energy. Um, which is kind of also sad because I also do all the things that Andy ever bitched about. Like there's never a dish in my sink ever.
I can confirm this. I was shocked when I came over for the first time.
Right?
Like
Every time I go over there, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. I feel like I just have the energy to let, I don't know, it's like meeting myself again.
Yeah.
How about you, Andy?
I would agree with the freedom, the feeling of free. Like you said, I never really felt not free, I guess, constrained in any way. But like the biggest difference I've noticed is that I feel more me than I have in a very long time, right? I've gone back to kind of doing things that I did as a teenager and growing up and as an adult even, right? Like I'm out riding bikes, I'm at the climbing gym, I'm a lot more active than I was. And that's something that's always been important to me, but it just felt like that I couldn't do it for some reason. I think it was, it was a mental block more than anything, right? Like I was holding myself back from a lot. And I think that was in order to I don't know, like make up for something, or I don't know, like I had this feeling in relationship that I couldn't do these things for some reason, or that I wasn't allowed to do these things for some reason, or that I didn't have the energy to do these things for some reason. And I've done I mean, ever since we split, and we've kind of talked about this, her, Brandy and I separately, right? That it just feels so much different, feels so much more energized, as she said, and with doing things that she didn't normally do when we were together. And I'm doing the same, right? I'm way more out there than I have been in a lot of years.
Yeah, it sounds like both of you, your capacity opened up.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's almost like being in an incorrect relationship takes so much energy just to be in it. And it's not that the other
Mm,
person is saying you can or can't do this. It's just
yeah.
that just existing in that dynamic is so difficult that your body is like processing that all the time and you don't have capacity to do other things.
Mm-hmm. It's like it's correct until it's not,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, and like reflecting back, it was very much like we would even check in with each other. Is there anything
Mhm.
unsaid? We had weekly check-in, 10 questions, but it was like I have undefined solar plexus, right? And so I'm like, I'll avoid the truth until I can no longer avoid it, right? And I think that Andy and I had such a great relationship, such great communication. We grew enormously together. We were like each other's biggest cheerleaders for growth,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you
And
know,
still are in a
and
lot of
still are.
ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're very tribal. So it was like, yes, we were on this mission, and until all of a sudden it wasn't. And then I think like we were so in it, and you're so like conditioned but
Committed.
committed.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
yeah, we're both defined egos, committed. And there were so many amazing things about our relationship. It's like, who would trade that?
Yeah. It's hard to focus on the negative
Yeah.
when there are so many positive things. But
Yeah.
I think that ends up being something where your mind is talking you into staying in
Mhm.
something, but the feeling is not, your body is feeling one way and your mind's feeling another way about it, because the mind is like, well, let me make a pros and cons list and let me look at it through this lens. But the body could be saying no while the mind is like, but all these positive things, and I think it's such a good example of the mind trying to keep you in something, or not wanting to let go because there are those positive things. It's like on paper it all looks good, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. We're a powerhouse team as far as a lot of things.
Yeah, materially you guys accomplished a lot together.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
we built a lot of stuff, did a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. I've really come around to see I think in society we look at relationships as that was a failure if you don't stay together till you die. But it's such a different way to look at it to see, oh no, there was so many things that were successful in that relationship and so many things that did work for that time. And sometimes time is just the factor. You grow in separate ways. I don't want to say you outgrow each other because I feel like you both have just grown in your own ways and you
Mhm.
just grow in separate ways, you know?
Yeah. And we probably wouldn't have lived as long as we're going to live now if we would have stayed together.
Yeah.
So
Why do
we
you say
very,
that?
very well could have stayed together until we died, but it probably would have been sooner than we wanted.
Do you say that because it was affecting your health so much?
Yeah, both of us.
Yeah. So I'm curious what health markers you've noticed have shifted for both of you.
Mm. Andy, you want to go first?
I guess the first and foremost that I notice is a lot more energy. I'm sleeping better than I have in I can't remember how long, years and
Wow, that's
years,
big because that was
right?
a huge thing for you. That was just a constant struggle.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
even slept separate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, and I still have, I still have nights and I still have things, but it's just not anywhere near what it was. So
Wow.
those are really the big things for me is yeah, the amount of energy. Well, also which is related to the sleep in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't, life doesn't feel as heavy just overall.
Mm.
Mm.
There's a lot of things going on in life. I've got a lot of things going on at work, things that I've never dealt with before, a lot of budget stuff, a lot of things that I'm just learning that are, pretty stressful. And I think I've handled it with a lot more grace than I have in the past with different things like this. So I've kind of been able to flow through it a little better than I'm used to, I guess.
Mm.
How's
Yeah.
how's your anxiety level been?
I've none. I've,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I mean,
Right?
Andy, when I first saw you for the first time when I was just visiting, I literally said to Brandy, it's like a light turned on in him. Like
Mhm.
you were glowing and there was an ease to your being and it just felt like you set down 1,000,000 pounds. Like you just
Mhm.
Yeah.
put down weight that you were carrying.
Mhm.
Right? I feel the same. And I don't know what the weight was. I couldn't like describe it to you in words, but I do know that it's gone. That I can definitely tell, right?
That's all that matters is it's gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same for me as far as well, I used to have to like take a bajillion supplements to like survive every day because my nervous system was so taxed and I didn't realize it as that. I preach this at my job, at my work, the business that I own. And sometimes you can't see it yourself, you know? But I don't have any I don't have any ruminating thoughts. I don't have any anxiety. I'm sleeping incredibly. I can eat whatever I want and I have no like quote unquote autoimmune issues that I had before. I could clearly list symptoms down and be like, you could put them into any category. It could be diagnosed as anything. And, I couldn't eat wheat without getting like red bumps all over my face. Like my body was telling me that my nervous system was not right. And I did a lot of nervous system things to, I meditate, do my red light, do my lymph work, all of that. But none of that matters when there's some unconscious thing when our nervous systems are intertwined with each other and it's saying that's not the right one to be intertwined with.
Yeah.
As soon as we separated, I take B12 and I take ion gut support because I always have. But that's it. I don't need anything to function and I can eat whatever I want. And my cycle is chef's kiss perfect.
That's something that I know is talked about in German new medicine discussions because it's like people will do everything but the hard thing that's
Mm.
actually the root cause. Like I'll take 1,000,000,000 supplements, I'll go see all these practitioners, I will invest all this money into my health, and yet the thing that's really going to fix it is leaving the relationship, and I don't want to do that. So, you
I
know.
mean, we got to the point where we were spending thousands to feel good. Like the amount of money that we spent, Andy. Ridiculous.
I can't even put a number on it. It's a lot.
A
Yeah.
lot.
Oh gosh.
Like so much. And actually, when we separated, um, that was what came up, right? Was he was on the, it was like an everyday Groundhog Day event to be like, how did you sleep? For me to ask Andy how he slept,
Mm.
you know, because I'm concerned all the time because he's not sleeping well.
Yeah.
And he was sitting on the couch and he just looked exhausted, right? And I was like, how'd you sleep? He's like, you know. And then just like it blurted out of my mouth. I was like, do you think the reason that you're exhausted is because we're not supposed to be together? And he said, yeah, I've been thinking about that actually.
So is that what opened the door to the conversation about separating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That question? Wow. And how did that feel for you, Andy, when she asked you that?
Wow. I mean, in the moment, it was terrifying. It hurt a lot,
Yeah.
you know, to even consider it was unthinkable, right? It's not like we didn't have a bad relationship. We didn't fight. We didn't argue. We talked very well. We communicated very well. Like we said, we did all these things, built a lot of stuff, you know, did very well financially. And when it came down to it, it just still didn't feel quite right, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so opening that up is definitely is a wound, right? Like abandonment issues and all these things, they just flood you, right? And you're like, shit, that's big. That's really big. And it's hard to handle in that moment.
Was there a part of you that knew for a long time that it probably wasn't right? And the other parts of you were just kind of like forcing you to stay?
For me, yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that. I mean, you know, I guess it's not really the like first time we've ever had that conversation, right? We had always kind of teetered around it and is this right? And should we continue doing this? And it always came down to the fact that we did everything so well together and we did have a lot of love for each other and it wasn't bad, right? Like
Yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
it didn't seem like the right course of action. And until it just suddenly was like, you know what? I think this has to happen.
Yeah, it's never for lack of love, right? It's like
Yeah.
people think that love can heal everything, and love actually cannot overcome everything, you know, in terms
Yeah.
of compatibility issues or, yeah, just whether something is just right for you or not. And so there's this notion in human design that people explore. And I don't know how true it is or not. It's just one of those things that we're kind of all noticing anecdotally. But projectors have to be invited out of a relationship, just like they have to be invited in. And that when somebody invites a projector out of the relationship, that's when the doors start opening, right?
Mm.
And so I wonder, Andy, do you feel like it couldn't be you that had to pull the trigger? Like it kind of had to be Brandy that really brought it up and like opened the door for you to leave, so to speak?
I feel like that would make sense, right? Like I feel like until that moment when the question was asked, it wasn't super clear, you
Yeah.
know? Like it didn't feel clear to me until it was like, yeah, I think we need to explore that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And that's not to say projectors should ever stay in abusive situations or anything
No.
like that. It's just kind of
Yeah.
something around energetics that people tend to notice of it's almost like the energy to leave, especially if it's a very materially intertwined relationship. There's a lot of steps that need to be taken.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work to
Yeah.
separate, you know, and to divvy up your material stuff and get a new place to live and all of that. So it just that's anecdotally what I've heard is that the material stuff feels easier or the energy becomes available to take care of that stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There was like, I always say we have the easiest divorce you could ever have. we're, we're actually not officially divorced yet because we're trying to convince the courts to let us get divorced faster than they're allowing us to get
Yeah.
divorced. We're not legally divorced yet. We checked the box to not wait the 90 days and they're like, no. And he resubmitted it again. He's like, let us get divorced.
I keep filing the same motion over and over again with like different explanations, hoping that one of the people will be like, "Oh, that makes sense," and just
Yeah.
stamp the thing. But we'll see what
No.
happens.
Because yeah, we didn't need to get lawyers or anything. Literally filled it out online,
Yeah. So what
handled
was that
everything between
process
us.
like? I don't know if
It's
anybody's curious about what the divorce process is actually like because I have no
it's
idea.
it's going to be different wherever you are, right? In Iowa, it's something that can be, there's an like a there's a website you can go to and you can click on the forms and it will like assist you in walking through the steps and filling it out. And then you can go and opens up a case with the court and submits that and you have to pay and all that stuff right at that point. Once the court accepts your case, they start asking for more information, financials and settlement agreements and all this kind of stuff. So we just kind of printed it all off. We sat down together, we walked through the things, filled it all out, signed all the paperwork and just submitted it. So far, it's been completely online. The one that we keep filing right now, or the one that I keep repeatedly filing, is to avoid going to court because of this, right? Like they scheduled us a court date. We have a court date scheduled. And I mean, realistically, we don't have any reason to do that. It's not like any of that's going to make any difference to us, right? So
Right.
it's completely on them wanting us to do this. And so the last time that I filed it, I wrote in the little box because it's like send a note to the clerk of court, right? And I'm like, we've been separated since last September. We're seeing other people. We've been living separately since last September. We are not getting back together. Like, please just approve this. So like
Because I was like, what are we going to do? We just show up and then be like, yeah.
We're ready.
yeah, still ready. Thanks.
Please,
Yeah,
Daddy, give me approval.
Yeah.
right? Like you can't just
Daddy
choose to do
government,
this.
let
Yeah.
us be released.
So it's been an interesting process. But
Yeah.
I'm sure people listening that have gone through difficult and challenging divorces are like in awe that this was so easy for you guys. Is there a reason that you guys feel like it was so easy? Is it just because you supported and cared and loved for each other? I know that there were some difficult emotions at the beginning of the process because, of course, right? It was a huge shift. And I would imagine for you, Andy, there may have been like some bitterness that needed to be worked through and all of that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. Do you want to share anything around that?
Yeah, there
Oh, go ahead.
absolutely was. Especially within the first couple weeks seemed really easy, and then kind of the second couple weeks got really difficult for me. I had some rough times. Um, and there was a lot of bitterness there, right? But the way that it ended up working out is I called Brandy and I'm like, "Hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's going on with me." And we kind of talked through it, right?
Hmm.
Beings that we're still able to have that relationship and be able to be friends is the only thing that's made it easy, right? It's
Mhm.
the only way that it's made it so that it's been simple.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I would say to anybody who, I mean, if you're already divorced, you already know. But if you're thinking about it or listening to this, or you go through it in the future after listening to this, it's like I loved Andy in a way that I didn't like. It felt like I needed to set him free, not set me free. It wasn't, it was like, I mean, there were other dynamics in there as well, but it was like, I don't want to make this difficult. He's not taking it personally. I'm not taking it personally, but we've both done a tremendous amount of inner work um, in our relationship and separately, but just grown
Mhm.
together and all of that. And so it was like, yeah, it hurts, but it's not personal. And I want to see what's best for him, and he wants to
mm,
see what's best for me. And so even when it came to like splitting assets and things, it was like, you know, we're both tribal. We both want to make sure each person's taken care of. And, it was kind of sticky because I wasn't taking much income from my job, you know, but I also didn't want to make that his responsibility, for a long time. I didn't want to be like, I'm going to go after you for spousal support and I'm going to take this. And it wasn't about what I could take, it's making sure that we both had what we needed,
yeah.
Mhm.
you know? And it just worked out. We downsized, we sold our house last year. Um, so we already like severely downsized and it made it a lot smoother. But it was never about like what I could take from him or what he owes me or, anything like that. It's, if anything, there's so much appreciation for what I was able to do and build and grow in our relationship and the support that he gave me. And then we would kind of like, you know, there would be times in our relationship where I would make more money or he would make more money. And it was just like we were just each supporting each other, each helping each other grow. So I don't see why our divorce would have to be any different than our relationship.
Yeah, it just seemed like there wasn't any pettiness, you know, and I
None.
think in
No.
situations like this, it can be really easy to get petty and go tit for tat and be keeping tallies and all of that. And I think when you know it's the right decision, you do want to take care of each other in that uncoupling as well,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we didn't share any children together.
which
So
makes it easier.
that makes
Yeah.
a layer of ease, right? But I
Yeah.
think even if we did have kids together, like I don't see it being any work, you know, any bad or bitterness, you know, like it,
There
yeah.
would be more logistics like to
Yeah.
figure out,
Yeah.
There'd be
right? But
logistics, yeah, but it
yeah.
wouldn't be like, how much can I take from you because I had your kid? Like,
Yeah.
that's not the energy. It was literally about making sure, like he would send me when he was looking at townhouses and houses, he'd send me the links and, you know, look at this one and look at this one. And what do you think about, you know, it was it's just not what you see, not, I've never been modeled that kind of divorce. So we kind of just made it up. Neither is
Yeah.
he, you know?
No. Yeah.
Well, and I think materially you were ready to go on your own too. Like you'd been building this for years, like this business to be
Mhm.
able to sustain you. And the timing was also just,
Well, yeah, he made a comment about that. Watch, you'll actually start to be able to get paid
yeah.
now. And I did, and it's
And
true.
Yeah.
right. And in the background too, I had talked to, friends or other people, and I'm like, I hope that this is the catalyst that kicks this off, right? Because I feel like for a lot of years she didn't have that. There was no pressure, right?
Yeah.
There was no reason to push it. There was no reason to make it work necessarily, right?
Right,
Other than I
right.
want to make it work, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
now it just has to, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that energized her in a lot of ways, and I think she's going to do great things with it because of that. So,
Yeah.
Channel
yeah.
struggle needs a challenge.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like we gotta have some
There
skin in
wasn't
the
the
game, you
challenge
know?
there.
There's
There
gotta be
wasn't.
some risk.
Yeah. I mean, I always like, you know, like I said, we severely downsized and our income did not severely downsize when we did. So, you know, sitting comfy, like I don't have to make it work. And now
Mhm.
it's like, oh, and I didn't even have to do it from that place. Like that wasn't my driver, you know? It was just like it just started to have I had the energy back because I was not intertwined in his nervous system.
Mhm.
And I had the energy to do the things that I needed to do. And then a byproduct of that is I'm officially on a W-2 this year. Woohoo.
Snaps.
That's a big deal for a business owner.
Yeah, that's huge.
I have a salary. What's up?
Right.
Look at you, little Miss Independent.
Yeah. But we still have like intertwined things. Like we own the building together that the business operates. He doesn't own the business, but we own the building together,
Yeah.
you know? So, yeah.
Right. She's still using my Netflix and
I'm
Amazon.
still using the
You know?
Netflix and Amazon. Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
little intertwined things.
Yeah, just the little things.
Yeah. I had to Venmo him some money the other day because I used PayPal and it was attached to our old
Oops.
bank account. I was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
I gotta send you some Venmo. Yeah. Yeah. It's been good.
I wanted to talk about the G Center because that's another
Mm.
thing in human design where if you have an undefined G center, you're kind of hitching a ride to the person with a defined G center. And to me, from the outside, it kind of always felt like Andy was hitching a ride to Brandy in a way of like, it's almost like she was on her trajectory and he was like, I guess we're doing this. You know, like there
Mm.
wasn't a lot of this feeling. I mean, as a couple, you were your own separate person, of course, but like in the relationship, she was just kind of like taking the reins and like, this is what we're doing, and now we're doing this, you know, and it just felt like you were on her ride, basically. Did that ever feel true for you?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, right? Like
In a lot of
it
ways.
it was always the big things, right? Like, oh,
Yes.
we're moving or we're starting a business or like,
Yes, that's what I mean. Like the
it was
direction
never
of
the small
the
things.
family.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Be like, hey, we're building a house.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
like, oh.
Like I feel like we need to build a house or move or whatever, right? Yeah. So in a lot of ways, yes, I was kind of along for the ride in those things, right? And I did feel that. I'm not saying that I wasn't unnoticed by any means, and
Mhm.
we've talked about that too, where a lot of times it just felt like I was just there. So,
Mhm.
and kind of being drug along in some of these adventures. And for me, part of the reason that we're separated is that's not the kind of adventure I want in my life, right? Like I don't want
Yeah.
to be bouncing around and
Yeah.
moving and starting businesses and all that
Yeah.
stuff. It's just not who I am.
He likes the actual
Wow.
like adventures like outside, which is also like, we talk about how we both feel free and we were like being held captive, but not really like in a, bad light. But it
Mhm.
was like I would be like, oh, we would try to plan our vacation. So we'd do one where he could adventure and one where I could lay on a beach or, like, or I'd be like, oh man, I really wish I liked sci-fi movies, or I really wish I liked those things, and he has a job kind of where he can be done at the end of the day. He doesn't have the responsibility of the company. And me, I'm like working all the time. So on the weekends, I'd be like, let's go down to Interspace. Let's do this. And I'm very business minded.
Yeah.
And he was very supportive. And I was supportive of him adventuring, but I was like, I don't want to adventure like that. And he's like, I don't want to adventure business. That's not an adventure that I want to take.
Yeah, and it's not like you have to have those things in common, but I think it's like if there are differences that are big differences, you're excited about that and want to learn about that and want to be a part of that with the person because I think opposites can attract and you don't
Oh
have
yeah.
to have like I think compatibility is actually just around like what you're a yes to and what you want to be a part of and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily whether or not you have everything in common, you know? Um, but yeah, it kind of feels like you both wanted different things in life. Like your
Mhm.
overall vision of your lives were very different, which I think
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
like if anything that's what true compatibility really is like having the same vision for your lives together, you know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like he was very much like working to retire and wanted to save money to retire. And, and I'm like,
Projector like I don't want to
yeah,
work forever. You're
right.
like
No,
I will
I
work until I
don't.
And
die.
I was like, I'm like, don't put money in a 401k. We could build something with that. We could grow it. That's just my money line. But it's just like, I'm like, I'll work forever. I will work. I can't imagine not working. I want to work. He'd be like, retirement. I'm like, yeah, my retirement is working and building, so you can see our types being very different there. And it's not to say that projector generator relationships don't work, but there was a big disconnect there as far as
Hmm.
like, you know. And I'd always think that like when we'd like try to do something adventurous, I would try sometimes, I'd try it. But I was like, man, I wonder what it'd be like if he had a partner that like wanted to go climb with him, you know? Like I would imagine that a lot actually. Like we would be doing things and I would kind of imagine what it would be like if he would be happier if he had somebody who, you know, I don't know, wanted to do all the outdoorsy shit that he loves to do more. And I enjoyed it, but I'd be like chilling. I'm also right environment, he's left environment. But I like doing those things, but I like working also a lot.
In building.
Building. Yeah.
So how is it now, Andy? I heard you're with somebody who you do have a lot more in common with and you like to go on those adventures with. Is that how does that feel for you now?
Um, it feels really free. Like I kind of explained earlier, I feel like I'm the most me I've been in forever, right?
Mm,
Um, like she doesn't necessarily like all the things I like either, right? Like she doesn't rock climb, things like that. But we could go out and go mountain biking. We took a trip to Arkansas last December and did some mountain biking because Bentonville is apparently the mountain biking capital of the Midwest. But it was incredible. We had a phenomenal time. We went out and mountain biked. We sit like when we're just hanging out, we watch, sci-fi and anime and things that I've always been interested in. Like I read sci-fi books starting at like 10 years old, right? Like this is an entire life, and it just wasn't a thing with Randy and I. It just didn't. So I, in a lot of ways, felt like I was restricted because I didn't want to, like own the TV or take over the what was happening or our entire entertainment selection, or I wanted there to be some compromise and be where everybody could be a little bit happy, but I was missing that. I was missing a lot of that. It's
It's
just
almost
something.
like the right person can amplify your true self, or de the wrong person can detract from it.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
I would
like,
agree with that. You know, working on a lot of things right now as far as, adventuring is concerned. I'm seriously trying to get my job to allow me to go full remote, and I'm working on buying a camper and literally just traveling all the time and living in a
wow.
camper and getting rid of pretty much everything I own that, things, anything that doesn't fit in a camper, right?
Just
So,
want to be unencumbered.
yeah. Yeah, and the woman that I'm with now is on board. She wants to do it too, right? So,
That's
Yeah.
exciting.
it is exciting. It's different. It's very different,
Yeah.
but it's very, very exciting.
It makes me think of Gate 35, which is in your incarnation cross.
Mhm.
And Gate 35 is hungry for progress and
Progress.
change. And there is an adventure element there too of like, I've done all the things I want to do. I want to do something new. It's kind of like this been there, done that energy. And once you've been
Hmm.
there, done that with enough things, it's like, okay, what's the next thing? Like where can I go for progress?
Yeah, and I definitely operate that way. Very much
Yeah.
so, right? Even in like my projectoring, right? Like I'll sit down and I'll learn a system, and the second that I feel that I've mastered it, I'm on to the next one.
Yeah.
It's just a consistent, constant thing with me. I'm always learning. I'm always curious. I'm always studying something.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, it was really telling that, like, because I'm the one that kind of brought up separating, right? So it was really telling when he was like already almost instantly knew what he was going to do, like the life that he was going to live, not being
Yeah.
married.
Yeah.
And so for anybody listening, it's really like, are you living the life that you want to be living, that thing that's like speaking to you inside, that thing that you keep pushing down and you keep quieting it because it doesn't make sense. Like, I know that sounds really like cliche, but it's true. Like, he knew exactly what he was going to do or
It showed
wanted
that
to
Yeah.
you'd
do.
thought about it. You'd fantasized before.
Well, I wasn't like planning it, right? Like it
Right.
wasn't something that was in the back of my mind, like I'm trying to escape by any means,
No,
right? But like
no.
the second that we started having these conversations, I was like, that I'm moving to the mountains. I'm
Yeah.
I'm getting
It's
out of
like,
Iowa. I'm mountain biking, I'm climbing, I'm hiking, I'm doing all the things that I do on vacation that I just want to be able to do every day,
mhm,
right?
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to live somewhere where I can do the things I love more often than vacation.
mhm,
Wow. It's like it's if the life that you want to live is completely impossible with the person that you're with now or the job you have or whatever, I think that's worth looking at. Like it's not
mhm,
that you don't make sacrifices for somebody when you really love
Mhm.
them, because that's different to each relationship, but I do think that's really telling of like you'd be living a completely different life if it weren't for this one person that's keeping you in this life.
mhm. Yeah. It's kind of looking at like the where are you compromising, and like I don't know. I don't think you have to. How I feel and what I've experienced since we've separated, like I don't think you have to compromise, as much as we kind of thought we had to in our relationship. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Andy.
I mean, just to an extent, yeah, right? There's little things, obviously, that you do
Well,
have to compromise
yeah,
on,
yeah.
right? Like,
Well,
what color of
I'm like
car are we buying, whatever, right?
big,
But when it
big,
comes to
big
these
things.
big, big
Yeah,
things, yeah,
big
Yeah.
things.
when you're making that kind of compromise, you're not doing anything but hurting yourself.
Right.
Yeah. When it's literally your entire life trajectory or your
Right.
entire way of living. And if you have to compromise that, there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And we didn't start out in relationship where we started and where it ended. We were two completely
Oh,
different people.
Yeah.
multiple times probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've so many iterations of ourselves. That's why I really think that we were together to grow together.
Yeah. Was how long were you guys together in total? Like 11, 12 years?
11,
And then married for
7,
6.
7, 6 years?
7, 8, 18, 19, 20, 20, 6.5.
I mean, yeah, you were completely different people when you first got together
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
lived completely different lives. Like your lifestyles completely changed while you were together. And it
Mhm.
seemed like you guys were each other's biggest cheerleaders for those kind of things of like,
Mhm.
Hmm.
hey, we need to change this, or I support you in changing that or exploring that for yourself to get healthier or whatever.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, we both quit drinking.
Hmm.
That was huge. Yeah, we were completely different people. Like it, looking back. Like we don't even look the same physically. It's
Right.
crazy.
Oh my gosh, the pictures of you guys from when you first got together are like jump scare. I can't. I mean, both
Uh-huh.
of you have aged backwards.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. We both got braces. I had him when I was younger, but I got him again and then he got him and yeah, we were just like self-improvement machines and we were here for it for each other, like
Hmm.
anything. Yeah.
That's so
Yeah, it
cool.
was really the first time in my life that I learned to take care of myself, like in general,
Mm.
right? Like wasn't something that was really around prior to that. I had started before Brandy and I got together, like maybe a
Mm.
year or two, started working on that and started losing weight and doing a lot of things, but it was a big catalyst. It was a huge
Yeah.
catalyst.
Randy, you having feelings come up?
It makes me really happy to hear that
Yeah.
because that's just like what I hope for with anybody that I meet, like
Yeah.
for you to say that's when I start taking care of myself. I'm like, my job's done.
Mm.
It's happy tears, like gratitude, you know?
Channel preservation.
Yeah, yeah, good. It's really good. And
Yeah. I got to feel protected. And I'm so grateful for that. You know, no matter what, I felt protected. I actually remember after we separated, I was like, oh fuck for a moment. And would have these like thoughts go through my head like, what if someone comes in my house? Or what if I'm staying in a hotel and I don't feel safe? Mm.
Just because he always made me feel so safe and I didn't have that, you know. We really, I feel in our relationship like helped each other heal like all these really deep parts of ourselves. And then I realized like the part of me that was needed protected doesn't need protected anymore. Um and I got to feel safety and feel that protection that I never had, you know.
It's almost like the part of you that never got to feel that needed to know it was possible to feel that.
Yeah.
And Andy provided that for you. And
Yeah.
I think this is where it's so sometimes we can't heal things by ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to
Mhm.
heal it in relationship because we have to experience something different than what our system is used to. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, wow, I can actually feel safe. I can feel protected. And someone can show me that through love so that I can love myself enough to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the things that I'm passionate about, right? The body and health and how it speaks to you and what for me, I'm still discovering what health really is, or it's not supplements, it's not, all of the surface level things. But I got to experience all of that in our relationship. And it was like I went to college for it, basically, you know? And I'm so grateful for that. Yeah, it was huge. And in that too, there's this part of, it's like, what is that feeling? It's like, I don't know why I'm seeing this. It's like when you graduate college or something, or graduate high school and you're leaving all the people that you know and all the things that you know. And you're like, wait a minute, you know, what if I need to learn this, And I think I learned enough, like I learned what I needed to learn. And it's not that he was like a pawn in my learning. He was like a great teacher to me. Our relationship,
It was a catalyst.
yeah,
Mhm.
was a great teacher. And it's like so many people, it's like, why would they? There's so many good things. Why would you give that up? And then you realize like can't, I couldn't stay in that school forever, you know? Yeah, that's how I
It's like
think about it.
your comfort zone, you know, just
Yeah,
because a relationship is comfortable doesn't mean that
right,
it's I mean,
right,
and I know you guys had lots of uncomfortable moments, like,
right.
which
Yeah,
as your friend was
yeah,
fascinating to watch and observe because I was always amazed at how willing you guys were to have the difficult conversations and to
mhm,
like go into those spaces together and to not avoid it, you know, and
yeah.
maybe there was some dancing around things at different times, but ultimately you guys were willing to like go to those places, which is really difficult to find that in a partnership.
Yeah, I would say eventually, right?
Yeah.
We got there. It was definitely not how we started, being that,
Mhm.
we were most definitely different people, right? And through that, it was like a school for me too, right? I've learned to have those conversations. I've learned not to be afraid of my own emotions and my own vulnerability. And now going forward, I'm able to do that with my new partner, right? And I hope that Brandy is too, right? Like
Mhm.
I think that that was just another one of those things that we learned through each other that's going to substantially benefit our lives, you know?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. We both had very like traumatic childhoods. And, there is, talk of like there's trauma bonding and this and this and this. And I would always check in on that in our relationship, but I think we were truly supposed to be together to learn how to heal those things, and not from this place where that's what we were like consciously seeking. It just we were able to heal them healthily together, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause you can't really consciously seek that.
Mm-mm.
It
I
has to
mean,
just unfold that way.
yeah. Yeah, and then it was like that's done, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so great for both of us. We're both in awesome relationships, which also we've even talked to each other on the phone and been like, dude, is this okay? Like not with each other, but just like to like be out of a like people will always say like you get out of a relationship and you get into one and you have XYZ failure rate, whatever. And we're both like, okay, we're looking at this. I'm checking off this. I'm looking at this. Like, is there something I'm not seeing? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like in the sense of, is this like a rebound type
yeah,
situation,
yeah,
right? Like because
yeah,
that definitely does happen. And
For
we
sure.
have had that conversation, right? Like,
right,
hey, I need a quick check-in, right? Like,
right,
Yeah.
am I crazy?
yeah,
Am
yeah,
I, because
yeah,
this is what's happening and this is how it feels. And
yeah.
like I feel like I want to be all in on this and I don't know if
Uh-huh.
it makes sense right now. Can you give me a check-in?
Yeah, yeah. And so we're still, yeah, we can still utilize each other in that way. And it's not strange. I mean, because we both got into relationships very quickly after. And I mean, quickly in the time in
Yeah, within a few
linear,
months.
with
Yeah,
in
yeah.
linear time. But it's just like, and when he told me who he was seeing, because I know her, I'm like, you guys are great together. Like that makes so much sense. If I could have like picked a person, I'm like, I wouldn't have thought of her right off the top of my head, but like I would have picked her for him. Like it just
Fourth
makes sense.
lines.
Yeah, I'm
I have to mention it. You guys are both fourth lines because I think it's more common for fourth lines to kind of get into another relationship relatively quickly, or kind of just meet somebody organically through the network, and then it just
Yeah.
one thing leads to another. And
Yeah.
each situation is so different. I think it's so silly to assign timelines onto that, because also there's the emotional timeline and then there's the actual
Yeah.
physical timeline of
Yeah.
separating. But I feel like you can kind of be at an emotional resolution and still physically be with the person, and then it can almost seem like you're moving on quicker or whatever.
Yeah. And for as fourth lines, the foundation of things is really important for me as a fourth line and a lot of fourth lines that I talk to. And it's kind of like this, we're not going to step onto something else, if there's not something else to step on kind of situation. Like we're not leaving jobs until there's another one. It's just this thing that happens. And I'm really grateful that both of us get to be in relationships where we have like so much awareness of ourselves. We have great communication and vulnerability and all of the things that we learned from each other, and then we can bring them into these new relationships, and him and I could still talk about it. So if that's
Mm-hmm.
weird to anybody, it means you're not a fourth line.
I know. Like my husband's a 3-6, right? And he's like, I'm not friends with anybody I've ever dated, and at this point we've been together for so long, I'm not really friends with anybody either. But when we first got together,
Yeah.
I was still friends with several of my exes, and
Yeah.
he was like, this is so weird.
Yeah. Well, Andy and I were friends before we dated too. So
Yep.
we knew each
Yeah.
other for a long time before we dated. So
Yeah,
that,
we've probably known each other for closer to 20 years at this
yeah.
point.
Well, how old
That's
is Alex?
crazy.
18.
She's 18, almost
Yeah.
19.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fourth lines.
Fourth
Friends
Yeah.
first. Foundation first.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how is that in your guys' new relationships? How do your new partners feel about y'all still being friends?
Well, first of all, my partner is a woman.
I mean, that's the elephant in the room that I was also going to ask about. I don't know how much you want
Just
to
to
get
be clear,
into
so
your
is mine.
sexuality.
No.
Just to be clear, so is Andy's.
Andy did
Well,
not shift his sexuality at all.
Well, that was something that, speaking of that was something I felt like I needed to tell him right away because there was a part of me that was pushing that down probably for like as long as I can have memories, you know? And I just felt like I wanted to tell him because I'm like, it's not like you are not a terrible person, you know? There's also this very big incompatibility that, you know, was very difficult for me to like, because I'm just going to shove it in my undefined solar plexus as long as I can, you know, there was that. And so I told him that like very quickly.
There is, a conversation to be had perhaps around compulsive heterosexuality, and,
Yeah.
it's, uh, I think that can be unconscious sometimes,
Uh-huh.
because why would you be any different? Why would you explore anything else
Yeah.
if you've never felt the pull to, or it's something you can shove down? And you and I had a lot of conversations that gave me pause. Where we share
Yeah.
everything with each other. We're very
Yeah.
open, and
Yeah.
there were
Yeah.
some things you would tell me where I'm like, I don't know if that's how that works. That were a little bit of clues that perhaps you were not fully
Well,
straight.
it was like not a surprise when I told
Yeah.
everybody in my circle. They're like, and I'm like, why aren't you surprised? And they're like, oh, remember you soft launched with your crush on Paige Beckers?
Oh
Like,
my gosh, that was the funniest thing. She all of a sudden starts sending me these TikToks of this like professional basketball player, and
Yeah.
I'm like, she's like, isn't she so hot or whatever? And I'm like,
it's like her energy.
yeah, whatever you said. You had never sent me any thirst traps from anybody, like, so I was just surprised that the first one you sent me was a woman, and I'm like, okay.
I even showed it to Andy.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
even
I
like
saw it.
this
Yeah.
is my crush.
Your soft launch.
Yep.
Yeah, because I'd go around work and I'd show everybody, I'd be like, this is my crush. And so then when I went to work and I was like, I have a girlfriend, they're like, cool. And I'm like, you don't even care? Nobody cares. Why
Like, well,
is
you were dropping mad hints,
why is
so
nobody why is nobody surprised? And they're like, oh yeah, you and Andy are getting along great during your divorce. Yeah, not surprised. I'm like, can't I have any element of surprise in my
Nope.
life to anybody? But back to your original question. Um, my girlfriend doesn't know how to, I don't want to say doesn't know how to respond to it because it's foreign, right? For me to be
Yeah.
like, I'm going to call Andy and whatever, or I
She's
talk
never
to Andy about
experienced
this.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just different. Yeah. What about you, Andy?
Kind of the same. She's been very supportive. She doesn't harbor any like jealousy or anything, but she has
Yeah.
mentioned that it's kind of strange in some
Yeah.
ways, right?
Yeah.
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 And I think more related to like me helping you out with things or like you
Yeah.
being able to call me and I'll run over and do whatever, hang a shelf or whatever happens, right?
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
that respect, she's like, is that okay? Like, like, yeah, I don't know, right? It
I'd be like,
just
I can hang the shelf because my whole closet fell down one day.
right.
And I just was like, Andy, I don't
Collapsed.
even know. I'm like, I can try. And I know probably part of his brain was like, she's gonna fuck that up. But I was like, I mean, I can do it. I think I can. I just need to know what to get. And he's like, I can do it. I'm like, I'm not gonna say no. Do
Yeah,
I
and
hire
and for
someone?
me, like it's something I know how to do. It's something
Yeah.
that's easy for me to fix. And I would do it for any of my friends that called and said, "Hey, I need this thing done," right? Like I don't it's not special treatment by any
Yeah.
Yeah.
means, right? It's like if my
Yeah.
brother called me, I'd be over there doing it for him the same way, It's just
Yeah.
how I work.
Yeah. I had to call Andy a lot at the beginning because like all the tech stuff in the house, because I live in the house and be like the internet, I don't know what's going on. There's so many boxes. Like I'm not aware of any of that stuff. So I just call him up and,
Yeah.
help.
And
Help
it's
me.
definitely tapered off
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
time has gone by, but
Yeah. Yeah. It has. It has. I think the our communication and it just being like so chill, it's like calling a friend. And I
Mhm.
think that's what weirds a lot of people out because they were like, oh, you guys were just like married. Yeah. Well, I'd hope that whoever I was married to, I'd want to be friends with,
Yeah.
but that's
Like
just
you actually
me.
genuinely like them as a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Mm.
mean, I can see that there are relationships where people aren't friends or in, so many different dynamics of the relationship where that would be like strange to hear. But I'm like, I hope whoever you're married to, you're friends with. Because
Mm.
essentially there was a part of me that was like, if I'm going to spend the rest of my life with someone, we got to be best friends.
Mhm.
That's just what has to
I
happen.
mean, that's a fourth line thing for sure.
Yeah.
Like they have to feel like it's like brotherhood, sisterhood is a keynote for the forget which gate that is. 6.4? I don't know. Can't remember. Don't hold me to that. But anyways, I know it's a fourth line keynote somewhere and it is that feeling of like not not in a weird way, but you almost want to feel that camaraderie with your partner.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there was something that just left my brain. Where'd it go? I don't know.
Pivoting
Oh,
back. Oh,
go ahead.
go. Yeah,
Nope, go
go.
ahead. No,
You found it.
no, I
Talk it.
didn't.
Speak
Nope.
it. Okay.
No, I didn't.
I wanted to pivot back to the sexuality piece because we kind of that's a big topic, and I wanted to know how Andy
Oh,
felt
I
about
know.
that.
I knew what it was.
Oh, okay.
We can come back
We'll
to
come
it.
back.
Sure.
Come back to yours or come back to mine.
You go.
Go
Okay.
now.
Say yours.
Can we talk about mechanics real quick? Because I think there's a huge piece here because I'm split definition. Okay.
Yes, this is huge.
Let's talk about this. People are not going to want to hear this.
Uh-oh.
Andy did not bridge my split.
Well, here's the thing too, coming from I've noticed a lot of shifts in our friendship since you got together with somebody who does bridge your split. And I
Mhm.
always, and now, like, I was talking to Thomas about this after it first happened, because that was a weird transition for me too. Like,
Yeah.
you basically relied on
Teresa was
me.
getting, yeah, Teresa was part of our divorce.
Well, you relied on me entirely for like emotional support and connection. And
Yes.
like, I mean, you had that
Yeah.
with Andy to an extent, right? But there's just something different about it when the person bridges your split.
Yes.
And I had to get used to not being that entire support system for you, or that it was almost like the void that you felt in your relationship you were filling with our friendship.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've talked about that too.
Yeah.
How it was like I was getting what I needed with the two people on this podcast. Like that's my marriage.
Yeah.
Like not my marriage, but like, I was getting things that I didn't even realize from Teresa that you could get in a relationship.
Yeah.
It
And
wasn't
I,
romantic with us. I'm not
right.
attracted to Teresa, by the way. She's a beautiful woman, but
Yeah,
just because I'm dating a woman,
for everyone.
Teresa's
Yeah,
not my girlfriend.
it just felt like, I get those things in my marriage. And so I was always like, I felt it was weird for me to get used to at first. And then I was so used to it when it went away. I was like, wait a minute. What am I? Chopped liver? No, I'm just
Right?
kidding.
Yeah.
But
Why is she not talking to
a-
me for 2 hours a day anymore?
Yeah.
She's talking to her girlfriend now.
Which
Yeah.
that feels like healthier for everyone, because I do think that we shouldn't be getting everything from our partner. Like, there are just certain things you can't get from your current partner that you get from me, and
Yes.
I can't get from
Yes.
Thomas that I get from you, and all of that.
Yes.
But there's a lot more balance now. It feels like you're fulfilled in your relationship and you're not trying to fill some kind of void with me. And it feels cleaner. And I
Yeah.
didn't know
Yeah.
that that was an issue, because it didn't feel like an issue for me. I enjoy talking to you, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was like, once the shift happened, it made so much sense. It was like, oh, this actually feels a lot cleaner now. So
Yeah. 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 I remember hearing that in, I don't know, some lecture about your partner not bridging your split and how important that is. And I was like, nah, that doesn't apply to me.
denial.
That doesn't apply to me at all.
Denial is a river.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, back to your question, Teresa.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the first thing I said when I looked at your new partner's composite chart. It was like, oh, she bridges your split like 4 times.
Yeah.
She bridges your split more than I do.
Yeah. And I mean, definitely moving towards that, like, that, that Raw talks about, like being with like as far as type and all of that, because she's also a 4/6 sacral MG.
Yeah. Although you guys have 3 emotional electromagnetics, so
2. Oh wait, no, we have 3. Just kidding.
So there's
That's
still a lot of waiting in the relationship.
There's a lot. There's a lot. Still gotta wait.
Still gotta wait. Okay.
Your question was about
My
sexuality.
question. I wanted to know how Andy felt about that, and how that felt for you to hear that from her.
I mean, I guess honestly, I wasn't necessarily surprised either. For me, I'm so well, like,
Brandy's like,
No,
damn
I'm
it.
just kidding.
so I can throw some context into that, right? Like, so the community that we've existed in here for the last 10 years or longer, right? Like, I'm so used to being around different types of relationships and different sexualities and everything, that it doesn't really affect me in the way that I think it does a lot of people. It's not something I think about. It's not something that I really notice so much, just because it's just part of life, and I've always existed in that part of life. So when she came out, I mean, I guess it was a little bit different, but definitely not surprising. For me, like, when our relationship ended, it wasn't about that who she was with, or that it was another woman. It was just, for me, like, emotionally, it was the timing of it, right? Like, that's what hurt me,
Yeah.
because it was very quick, right?
Yeah.
Like,
That's understandable. Did you have thoughts cross your mind of like, oh, was she already in this relationship before ending, or like, was she cheating on me?
I did, yeah. And I talked to her about it. Yeah. We had that conversation shortly after, because I mean, It was very, very quick. And right after I found out, that was very hard. Not because of who she was or, but because of how quickly it was. And those thoughts, right? It was exactly that. It was, how long has this been going on? What is happening? Is this
Mhm.
planned? Is this, all these things,
Yeah.
that those ruminating thoughts that pop up. Because up to
Yeah.
that point, we had just been getting along, really,
Yeah.
really great. And then all of a sudden it was like a switch. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? How did that happen so quickly? Was it something that's been happening?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, I did have those emotions and I had those feelings and
That can
thoughts.
Yeah.
feel like a big betrayal.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And in the moment it did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it
because
took
you
me a
were
few days
unsure.
to process through that. And it took me a few days to call back and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I did have a lot of feelings about this and I had a lot of emotions about this. And those are mine and mine alone. And I need to process them. And it's not on you,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and I had to make that call, and that was very difficult to do. But it felt important that she know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's takes a lot of maturity to be able to own that.
Mhm. Yeah. I was really worried that he would think that I was in a relationship before or had any of that, but I always want to remain in integrity, and that was
Yeah.
not the case. I even I don't know if it's my authority, but it's just like in that moment you just know, you
Yeah.
know? And that's why it switched so quickly. But I also have a history of I'll go home one day and be like, "We got to sell our house." It's just like that. It's just quick all of a sudden. Um, but yeah, I never stepped out in our relationship, and nothing was there before. But I knew I needed to end one thing before starting another.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's all so fascinating.
I had actually said something to you. Do you remember when we were in New Mexico in Taos?
Hmm.
Yeah,
What did you say?
because I had met her um through work, and she would just like challenge me, right? Like intellectually, and just I don't know, it just was nice and refreshing and something I needed. And I remember saying to him when we were heading down to the HDHD conference, and I just felt this like in my body, like I can't keep anything from him. Like, my body won't allow, I can't keep any secrets. I can't be sneaky or sly or stealthy about nothing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even get a gift and not give it immediately or tell, or I'd call him, if Teresa didn't answer or if he didn't answer, I'd call Teresa and vice versa. I'd be like, I can't hold anything in. And so I just felt it like sitting in my body, like this curiosity about being challenged and what was I feeling. And I think my mind was trying to figure out what I was feeling, you know? I didn't have any idea it was like feelings, but my mind is like, oh, well, she challenges you in this, and it's like nice and refreshing. And so we were in Taos, and I just, yeah, felt it like bubbling up, and I'm like laying on the bed, and I was like, I gotta tell you, like, I need more. I need to be challenged. I need this. I need this. And it's these things that I was feeling of my interactions with her. And I was like, this is what I'm telling you what I need in our relationship. And I even was crying, and I said, it makes me think that I'm a lesbian or something, you know? And I said it.
Mm-hmm.
Eh, yeah. And I was just like, okay, got it out. Like, got that. That's not the truth, right? So I'm just like, got it out, aired it out, but it's not the real truth. That's what I was telling myself.
Yeah. And in that same conversation, she also asked me about, how I felt about life and whether I was experiencing enough and having
Mhm.
adventure and
Mhm.
and how I was feeling, if I was feeling alone doing those things, since she didn't necessarily like to. And so we had that conversation like leading up to all of this,
Mhm.
not necessarily expecting this as the outcome, but
Right.
Mm. Yeah, I
And
mean,
it was there.
when I say we talked about everything, we talked about everything. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys did. I mean, and in every conversation you and I had about it, you were like, I just don't think he's happy. Like Andy and his happiness was always part of the equation. It was like basically you just felt like you both would be better off. And
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
I think that's really nice to have that kind of consideration for each other, even in that space of making such a decision of like also looking at their life and wondering what their life would be like without you and not just, oh, what would my life be like without this person?
Yeah, I didn't actually even think about that too much. My own life,
Yeah.
was not, like I said, even with, and when it comes down to material things, like that should freak me out.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it wasn't even a thought. I just need to make sure I have my Pyrex and my bed. He got a new set. It's okay.
It's okay.
But he had fun
Uh,
picking out all stuff for his kitchen and all of that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
I mean, what was that like getting to make decisions for yourself without having to consider another person, even when it's something as small as like things for the house?
It was weird, honestly, right? Like it was very different for me. I hadn't done something like that in a very long time. So yeah, wandering around picking out dishes and buying a couch and picking up, new furniture and everything. Because when I moved, I didn't take anything. Like my
Hmm.
bed and stuff that was in my room and, some things here and there, but no furniture stuff at all. So that was a new adventure that is something I haven't done in a very, very long time. So it was challenging in some ways and it was refreshing in a lot of ways. And I mean,
Mhm.
so it's been nice overall. Yeah,
It's kind of like getting to have that relationship with yourself. Like, what do I like? What's my taste? How would I decorate this
absolutely.
place? It's kind of like getting to meet yourself in a different way.
Yep. Well, and partially too, in the back of my mind, I've got this plan to get out of here, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I'm like also trying to be cognizant of that and not buy too many things that I'm not going to use or not going to need. And I'm going to buy an inexpensive couch that I can sell or give away in the end of a year. And like
Yeah.
there was a lot of logistics and thoughts that kind of went into it, like when I was trying to plan that stuff out. Like, can I fit this in a small U-Haul and take it wherever I'm going? Yes or no? I don't need it if I can't. So.
Very practical.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy to see like the arc of our relationship from like the material standpoint too. Like how we had the life that a lot of people would love to have, right? And the things that people would like to have and all of all of that stuff and then at the end of it, we're both happier with like the least amount of things, you know? Um, and I mean, don't get me wrong, we still like nice things, but
Hmm.
but it's just not about the like keeping up with the Joneses or what your life is supposed to look like. We had all that. We did all that. We had two incredible houses. One of them that we custom built, however we wanted it, which was hard to sell because we built it how we wanted it, not for how other people would want it. But
I,
it's just like this looking back, this lesson on material stuff. It's like you take nothing with you when you die, anyways.
yeah. Which both of you have, those material channels,
Mhm.
3740, 2145. But I also, I'm hearing the 3536 a lot in this conversation because I know you have that as an electromagnetic. And it seems like a lot of things that you guys learned together was around expectations and like having an experience and then having it not be what you thought it was going to be. And,
Mhm.
it's almost like that experience of getting the house and having the things. It ended up being not what you guys thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
And it showed you that you wanted to live differently.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We did so many things and acquired so many things and sold and gave away and traded and and did all the things. We traveled and took trips and bought nice things and in the end it ultimately was like, yeah, none of that's it's not real, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
there's no happiness in any of those things. The happiness is the things is what you build while you're doing it for the most part, right? Like it's always the build up to the thing
Mhm.
before you actually get the thing where the most
Hmm.
excitement and joy comes from.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, you guys have been good role models for me, even because watching you guys go through that was like, oh wow, I wonder if I actually want the things I think I want. Or, you know, what if I could just keep my life as simple as possible? Because I think there's a lot of conditioning in society around having the American dream and having all these material things and whatever. And to see you guys go through downsizing and getting rid of those things and now like living the lives you really want to live, that's really inspiring because it's not easy to do that either, to like come out of that conditioning.
Right. And how much of it, I mean, I wouldn't say our life was like about filling voids, but how much of it kind of like part of it was, it's like, what were we doing to kind of fill this need for, something,
Yeah.
and I think we started checking ourselves on that before we even moved. But
Mhm.
it was just like, I mean, the amount of shit that we got rid of when we downsized, like I just filled up the curb several times, just put stuff on the curb, stuff you should sell probably because, but I was just like, go get it. I just felt this like purge and of everything. And looking back, it's like I was like pre-surrendering to like the process of life. It was like I always listened to my little nudges. So when I was a yes to moving into the trailer, that sounds crazy to people, but it set us up beautifully for separating, We didn't have to deal with any of the house stuff. We didn't have to deal, I don't know, one of us
Yeah.
being attached to the house or not.
Yeah.
Oh, and even really prior to us separating, it set us up in a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it changed fundamentally like how we lived
Mhm.
before we even decided to separate, doing that, right?
Yeah,
Being able to let
absolutely.
go of all that stuff in this house that we custom built and being like, you know what? That didn't make us happy. Let's
Right,
downsize. Let's do what we can. Let's make life simple. Let's do the things we truly love and forget about all the rest of that stuff.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, I have a little yard and I paid somebody $25 a week to come mow it because I was like, what is that doesn't make me happy. Where before it's like we used to have a property where we'd have to mow an entire acre and sit on and that was fun because I'd sit on the riding lawnmower, listen to an audiobook,
Mhm.
but and maybe it's just me like being more on the roof. I don't know, but I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
I want to take care of all the things and
Yeah. Yeah, I just know that the feeling of happiness is not in those things. But also Andy and I, we very much lived lives growing up where we didn't have those things. I mean, shit, we were very, very poor, each of our families growing up, very poor when we were younger. So to be able to have the things, the nice things, and give our kids nice things, that felt really good to be able to provide for them whatever they needed, you know, that felt really good to be able to do that. And it's almost like, okay, now I know I can do that. Let's do this, let's try this. What's it like to live with no mortgage? What's it like to not spend our weekends on yard work? What would we do? Who are we when we're not doing all this maintenance of these material things?
it's almost
And
like that opened the door for you guys to recognize the truth of your relationship too, because maybe you wouldn't have even had capacity for that truth had you still been weighed down by all the
yeah,
material stuff.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
I'd say that feels true.
yep,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
You're like, well, now all we got is time and we're just gonna stare at each other.
Right.
So we got nothing to
Right.
distract us anymore from
Well,
the
well,
truth here.
even with him moving out, and I like used to buy so much food, right? Yeah, I have channel preservation. I'm conditioned by my fear motivation, mom. I know. However, like I go in the pantry, I'm like, there's still so much food in here. Why did we have so much food?
Like bins in a spare bedroom in a closet
Like
of
rice and food and all this
yeah.
shit. Yeah, he came over the other night. I can't remember. What were you dropping off or picking up? I can't remember what it was. Anyway, he
I don't
comes
remember
he,
either.
he comes onto the porch and there's like totes and
Just a
shit for
whole
him to take.
pile.
And I'm like, I'm going through the extra room. Half of it's yours. And by marriage, we're really splitting our stuff. Half of this is yours. I don't want this half.
And I'm like,
And
I'm moving into a camper. I don't need any of this shit either.
you can get rid of it.
Like, this is your responsibility to get rid of now.
Well, it's handled.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that's been pretty fun. Just going through all this stuff, and I'm just like, we still have the garage to go through when it gets nice out, but yeah. And as we've moved from house to house, we've decreased, right? We used to have an entire shop full of like woodworking tools and all this. And then when we moved, we downsized, we put them in storage, and then we finally went through the storage. So it was like this letting go. It's like our past selves, our future selves are speaking to our past selves in these really weird little ways of like, you don't need this. You're not going to need this. Cause he'd always be like, well, I want to have a shop someday. And I'm like, do you though? Is that really what you want to do? Do you really want to do carpentry stuff? Like, you know, and then as we just like clear, like purge things, because I'm the queen of that. One day my spleen will be like, all of it needs to go.
Yeah.
But I had to balance it with him, having attachment to stuff as well. And so it was just kind of like over the years, this little process of like, getting rid of stuff. Yeah.
Slowly whittling it down and
Yeah.
figuring out what life is all about underneath the rubble.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what's under there is happiness, honestly. What's under
Yeah.
all of it. Well, I used to search for joy all the time. I could not find it. I think my joy is veiled on my chart. I can't.
Your Neptune, I think.
Yeah.
58 in your Neptune.
58 my Neptune. I'd find these weird ways to find joy, and I was realizing that like I was trying to figure out who I was. Like maybe I want to do puzzles. I do like to do puzzles, but maybe I started doing diamond art and like crafts to like, okay, where's the joy? This is supposed to have joy, like, searching
Why am
for
I not
this.
feeling the joy?
Why am I not? I'm not like, yeah, it makes me joyful for a little bit, but like I feel like we're supposed to just be joy. Like that's what we're supposed to be. That's how we're supposed to move through the world. And then I was like, okay, when is it like, when do I feel that? What do I need to do that? What do I have to buy? What do I have to get? What do I have to experience? And then it was like, once I realized, and then none of that. And I'm like, oh, I am feeling joy all the time. I do all the time. And it's not attached to Andy leaving as far as him as a person, but us separating created the capacity for me to like feel joy in all the things, but it's not his fault,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that that's not your fault.
No, I know.
You were telling me the other day how on the weekends, your girlfriend was like, so what did you used to do on the weekends? What should we do together? It's
Yeah.
like, because both of you like to work so much. And so
Yeah.
there's almost this you getting to explore figuring out what it is you actually do want to do if you're
Yeah.
having better boundaries around work and not working all weekend and all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Trying, because Andy would kind of lead the way on what are we going to do on the weekend,
Yeah.
I'd be like, I don't know. He'd be like, well, let's go do this, or let's, and yeah.
Yeah, there's this thing going on downtown, or this is
Yeah.
happening, or let's
Yeah.
go hit the kayaks, or yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're like, I
absolutely,
just want to
right?
work.
Yeah.
Want to work. Yeah. So I'm discovering that. And Andy's probably discovering like no resistance to adventuring.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as it stands right now, I can just go do those things. But now I also have a partner that's interested in at least trying those things too,
Yeah.
if not, like getting completely addicted to mountain biking at this point. So
That's awesome.
she's, all in on a lot of this.
Yeah.
Aw.
And already owns her own kayak and, already
Yeah.
has done some of this stuff separately also. So
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Does that mean you're only going to take one kayak?
it's up to you. Yeah. We can split the kayaks, but I'm taking the big one. So.
The fast one.
Yep.
There's one kayak. We have one kayak. It's not a fair kayaking game.
It's not.
I'll tell you
The
that.
experience
racing,
is
you mean?
completely different.
He has one that's like you hardly paddle and it just shoots across the lake, right? And then the other one you're like, then you feel like because it's like more of a beginner kayak, but you feel like a beginner in it. And I'm like, no, you
Right.
need the faster one. It really points out that you're not an adventurer in the kayak.
Yeah.
You're like,
Wow,
oh
look
yeah,
at that slowpoke.
this is just confirmation that I'm not supposed to kayak because this is a struggle.
Not the correct struggle.
Not the correct struggle.
Right,
Right.
right.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I feel like we talked about all of my burning questions. How do you guys
Yeah.
feel? Is there anything
feel
else you want to
good.
share?
Anything you want to add, Andy?
No, I mean, yeah, I'm just excited for life. I'm excited to see where this goes for both of us and, kind of feeling out and figuring out along the way. And I'm just, I'm happy that I can still call you my friend through all of this.
Same. I do want to point out one thing. We live in Iowa, so it snows, and Weston just
Mhm.
turned 14 and got his permit. So it was snowy one night, and I asked Andy, or I was talking to Andy about it. He's like, "Oh, maybe I'll see if Weston wants to go drive." So he took Weston out driving, and when Weston got back, he said, "Man, why couldn't Andy be like that when you guys were together?" And I said, "What do you
Mm.
mean?" And he said, "He's so cool."
Oh,
And I was like, "Yeah, he is. That's because we're not together. That's why he's so
that's
cool."
he
Like
gets to be
he's
himself.
like, yeah, he's like, he's so fun to hang out with. Like if he would have been like that when you guys were together, I'm like, and I'm also different. Weston's noticed that too. So,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we couldn't be who we are together. And that was just the hard truth that, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean that's ultimately what it came down to,
Yeah.
In the end, when we're having those conversations, it's that we were fundamentally different people and wanted fundamentally different things from life, and
Mhm.
it just couldn't work the way that it was.
Yeah. I'd say our divorce was because we just loved ourselves so much and each other in that way too. Like, I'm doing this because I love me. You're doing that because you love you. And that's what's most important.
Yeah, I feel like you have to be able to fully love yourself in a relationship, you know?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we're going as the background frequency shifts and things become a lot more individual and whatnot. It's like in order for something to be compatible, there has to be the self love and the ability to do that and not feel like you have to hold back from loving yourself in some way.
Yeah, and even beyond that, fully loving yourself allows you to fully know yourself and
Hmm.
know yourself how you are separately. And
Yeah.
knowing yourself how you are in relationship allows you to make, better decisions as to
Mhm.
what type of relationship you're in and what you're doing with your life and how you walk in the world.
Mm.
I think we both loved ourselves together,
Hmm.
but it's like if that were to grow as like, I don't know, I just saw like almost like something that envelops you. It's like it just one day it just that love for myself enveloped me where all truth felt safe, where everything felt safe, where it's like my whole body just knew. And it wasn't like expected. It wasn't like literally I didn't walk in the house that day and expect to say that, or expect for that to be what the day had in store. I didn't have it planned. So it was just like at that moment, it just like engulfed, like you love yourself more than anything right now. You are safe. It's this weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a good place to end it. Tie this up with a bow. Full circle moment.
Mm-hmm. I'm
Andy, thanks
grateful
for.
for our marriage.
Me too. Yeah.
Well, I'm
I'm
grateful
ex-
for both of you.
and I'm excited to see your road trip adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah, come to Arizona.
Yeah, I already told Thomas that I was going to. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
another thing. I'm really glad that like we can still all be friends and we didn't have to choose anybody
Yeah.
in a divorce. from a friend's perspective, because I remember Thomas being like, "Can I still be friends with Andy?" And I was like, "Of course." And just
Yes.
kind of
Yep.
telling him like, "Have you checked in on Andy? Because like I feel like I need to be there for Brandy right now, but like we can't just give all our energy to her." And
Yeah.
so it's
No,
good. We can all be friends and live
Yep.
happily ever after.
Yep. Yep. I've talked to him quite a bit. I've talked to, people I've met through the human design community. People have reached out to me from places that I didn't even remember,
Yeah.
Wow.
throughout this. It's been incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you for
thanks for
joining us today.
listening. Thank you for coming. We really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was nice.